You have felt it before, that deep, heavy exhaustion that has nothing to do with physical work. It is soul fatigue. It is waking up at 6 a.m., making a rigid promise to yourself that today is the day, and then watching yourself break that exact promise by noon. The usual advice tells you to rely on passion, to build a gentle morning routine, or to wait for inspiration. But passion is a fragile flame. A stiff breeze blows it out. Treating discipline like a gentle self-care habit incorrectly assumes your mind actually wants to do the hard work. Take a look at this cyclical feedback loop. This illustrates the constant path from a sudden spike in motivation right down to total collapse. The point of friction right here, that is your brain's comfort mechanism kicking in. It is biologically wired for survival and calorie preservation, meaning it will continuously try to negotiate its way out of greatness. If you treat your own mind like a rational partner in your success, you are playing a rigged game. It is designed for softness. You need a completely different approach. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote a manual for survival. He did not write for saints, and he was not interested in pleasant morality. He wrote for leaders trying to hold on to power in a chaotic, dangerous world. Machiavelli's philosophy demands that you treat discipline as an act of violence against your own weakness. Think of it as internal statecraft. Your mind is a kingdom in a state of constant rebellion, filled with unruly emotions and excuses trying to overthrow your goals. To restore order, you have to step into the role of the prince. Adopting this philosophy takes you out of the passenger seat. You stop being a slave to your impulses, your phone, or your fatigue, and you become an autonomous, untouchable sovereign over your own life. The average person broadcasts everything. They announce their new diet or their new workout plan on social media before doing a single day of work. This artificial validation releases the pressure valve of ambition. They get the applause before exerting the effort, which guarantees they will fail. Machiavelli understood the power of remaining unseen. We can call this the discipline of silence. When you operate as a ghost, working entirely in the dark, you make mistakes that no one sees. You correct them without judgment, building your strength without the interference of public opinion. When you suddenly go silent, it creates an information vacuum. People become unsettled. Without constant updates, they start projecting their own fears onto you, wondering why you no longer need their attention or approval. Withholding your intent is the mandatory first step to securing control over your environment. You become unpredictable, and therefore you become formidable. There is a persistent myth that highly disciplined people are robots who do not feel pain or boredom. That is entirely false. They feel the intense urge to quit, the sting of rejection, and the desire to sleep in. The difference is they practice emotional alchemy to override it. If you are the prince, your sadness, fatigue, and anxiety are your unruly subjects. You listen to them. You acknowledge that it is raining outside or that you are exhausted, but you strip them of their voting power. They do not get to dictate the kingdom's actions. To execute this, you need a tactical mechanism, the 3-second rule. When the alarm goes off or the work is in front of you, you have exactly 3 seconds to move before your brain formulates an excuse. You bypass the negotiation. You take the heavy lead weight of "I don't want to," and you transmute it directly into the gold of "I did it anyway." If you only work when you are motivated, your enemies, or your own bad habits, just have to wait until you are sad or tired to defeat you. But a person who works harder when they are miserable, who trains deeper when they are heartbroken, develops absolute immunity to external circumstances. When your internal emotional state no longer dictates your external output, you cross a threshold. You achieve actual freedom. To maintain this state, you must practice weaponized isolation. Most people are terrified of being alone with their own thoughts, so they fill the silence with distractions and surround themselves with comfortable peers. But relying on stagnant circles makes you predictable, and it makes you vulnerable. Machiavelli studied history deeply, and history shows a clear pattern. Look at this structure. Great empires like Rome did not reach their peak by accident, and they did not fall strictly because of external enemies. They fell because they rotted from within. They lost their absolute standards, and luxury made them weak.
We see the exact same decay today. We live in the most luxurious time in human history.
Endless entertainment, delivered food, and cheap dopamine function as sedatives, designed to pacify the population and erode internal discipline until only ruins remain. To be disciplined in an environment built for sedation is an act of rebellion. When you set mechanical, uncompromising standards for yourself, you naturally expose the mediocrity around you. People will call you obsessed or distant simply because your progress highlights their own stagnation. Because so few people can resist these modern comforts, your ability to do so creates a rare commodity. When you are the only one in the room who cannot be distracted or discouraged, you gain a monopoly on high-level execution. This scarcity of focus elevates you entirely out of the average competition. This brings us to the hardest phase of the Machiavellian process. To become the person who commands respect, you have to hold a funeral. You must orchestrate the deliberate, painful death of your old self. You have to systematically eliminate specific traits. You kill the version of you that desperately needs to be liked. You kill the version that apologizes for having ambition. And you completely destroy the part of you that craves external sympathy when things get difficult. It leaves you raw, but it is the only way to grow. This rebirth forces you to operate on logic, treating the world as a chessboard where every move is calculated for the long game. Machiavelli knew that true power is deeply intimidating, but you are not building power to inflict tyranny over others. Conquering your past self yields a majestic power over your own mind, which is a far greater victory than conquering a city. Once you stop breaking those promises you made at 6 a.m., the background anxiety of your life begins to fade. That hum was the sound of your mind recognizing the gap between who you said you were and what you actually did. By eliminating those internal lies through consistent execution, you remove the source of the noise. You achieve what we can call cold freedom. Think of it as the wolf on the hill, looking down at the sheep in the pen. The sheep are warm, they are safe, and they are fed, but they are trapped. The wolf is out in the cold, and he is hungry, but he is completely free. In an increasingly chaotic and softening world, your discipline is your ultimate truth. They can take your money, they can take your job, and they can take your reputation. But this ruthless internal fortress is the one asset that can never be seized. So you have a decision to make today. You can return to the comforting illusion of the herd and wait for the world to dictate your fate. Or you can embrace the powerful, lonely reality of the hunt. The old you is gone. Go build the new one.